Hello, everyone. Mr. Eford here. I hope that you guys are doing well. We are going to be learning today about the people of ancient Israel. And yesterday, we kind of went over some of the vocabulary terms, the content vocabulary that you guys needed to know to jump into this unit. Today, we're going to jump into the history of the people of Israel. And this is going to be kind of a lengthy lesson. I'm going to go ahead and tell you guys that we're breaking it up into two parts. You'll get one video today talking about the first Israelites. We're going to conclude this lesson tomorrow. So the notes that you have attached in your Canvas, you're going to only be able to do about half of those today. The other half will get done tomorrow. And again, I just didn't want to overload you guys with a 45-minute lesson. So we're going to break this up into two parts. But because we do have so much to cover, we're going to jump right in and get started. So hang out with me for the next couple of minutes. We're going to talk about ancient Israel and the impact that this civilization had on other civilizations, even modern impacts that the civilization of Israel has on us today. So jumping into this, our first screen that you see behind me is just an overview. Who are the Israelite people? And then there's a timeline at the bottom that kind of breaks down some important events that we're going to be looking at today. So starting off, we need to nail down a couple of things. Number one, the Israelites believe in a single God. We call this monotheism, right? We looked at this in the definitions yesterday. Most of the other civilizations in the world at this point are polytheistic. They believe in many gods and goddesses. The Israelites are different. They believe that there is only one God, right? And not only is there only one God, but they believe that this God has given mankind, has given the Israelite people a set of what are called moral laws, okay? And the laws don't come from man, they come from God, which gives them a different level of authority. Moral laws have to do with right and wrong, good and evil. And it has to do with the decisions that you make, the actions that you take. Are your actions good or are they bad? Do they lead to good things happening? Do they lead to evil happening? And so the law kind of breaks up a distinction here between what is right and what is wrong, what you should do and what you should not do. And so we're going to look at the implications of having a law based on morality and how that affects us. Even in the modern day, a lot of our laws center on morality, doing what is right. So we're going to look at that and the impact that it has. We also know that the people of Israel recorded their history in what is called the Hebrew Bible. And we're going to talk about what the Hebrew Bible is and kind of make some relations here as we move forward. All right, so the timeline at the bottom begins in 1400 BC with an important event in the history of Israel, and that event is called the Exodus, right? This is when Moses leads the people of Israel out of Egypt. They have been enslaved in Egypt for a long period of time. Moses leads them to freedom, and they actually begin to inhabit a land that they call the Promised Land. This is the land of Canaan. So they begin to settle and live in the land of Canaan. It's actually about 1290 BC. Then we move forward. We're going to look at a character called Deborah. That's what takes place around 1125 BC. Deborah is one of the judges. She leads Israel into victory over a rival kingdom. And then in 1000 BC, at the end of our timeline, we're going to look at the rule of one of Israel's most important kings, a guy by the name of King David. And we're going to talk about him a little bit and the contributions that David made toward the history of Israel. Okay, so that's what we're going to be talking about today. That's what we're diving into. And without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started. Here we go. All right, so we're going to talk about geography first. Location is important. And for the people of Israel, location is going to be on the shores of the Mediterranean Sea. So this is where everything takes place here. Around 1200 BC, there were a lot of changes taking place around the Mediterranean Sea. Empires were falling during this time. People were moving into the region, and many of these people set up their own small kingdoms in the lands that they settled. Hey, the people of Israel settled in a land called Canaan. They built their own kingdom, their own little area in Canaan. Canaan is the area in purple on your map. It is an area that borders the Mediterranean Sea in what is today Southwest Asia. The land of Canaan is currently where Israel, the Jordan, and Lebanon are located. Okay, so we're going to look again a little bit more of the geography of Israel a little bit later on, but this is location-wise where all of this takes place. All right, so we're going to talk about Judaism. This is the faith, the religious beliefs of the Israelite people. The Israelite faith became a religion today known as Judaism. The followers of Judaism are eventually called Jews. This is where we get the word Jew from. Judaism influenced two major world religions, Christianity and Islam. Now, these are two of the largest religions in the world today. And so the effects of Judaism are still being felt even now in 2020, in the modern time period. We're still feeling the effects of the Judaic faith. All right, so it also helps shape the beliefs and practices of societies in both Europe and America. We see a lot of the ideas that emerge in Europe, the ideas that would eventually lead to the settlement of the United States, in many cases, are tied back to these beliefs in Christianity, which again goes back to Judaism. All of that ties in together. All right, so we're going to continue to move forward here. All right, what you see behind me is the Hebrew alphabet. I'm not going to try to pronounce these different letters, but this is what the Hebrew alphabet looks like. The Israelites spoke a language called Hebrew. They wrote down their history and many of their religious beliefs in what later became the Hebrew Bible. So in general, what the Hebrew Bible is the Old Testament of the Christian Bible, okay? Throughout this book, Jewish values and religion later influenced all sorts of religious practices in Europe and then later on in America as well, okay? All right, so we're talking about different trade skills and job skills that people had at this point in time. The earliest Israelites were mostly shepherds. They herded animals, particularly sheep, right? And they were traders as well. According to the Hebrew Bible, they came from Mesopotamia and settled in Canaan. Today, the countries of Lebanon, Israel, and Jordan occupy the land that was once Canaan. I'm sorry, I think I bumped the screen there. So again, we're looking at this land now that's currently occupied by Israel, Lebanon, and the Jordan. This is where the people of Israel settle. Most of them are shepherds, okay, and traders. That's job skills that the people would have during this time. All right, the Israelites believed that they descended from a man by the name of Abraham. So we're getting into the origins of the Hebrew people here. In the Hebrew Bible, it says that God told Abraham and his followers to leave Mesopotamia. It says that Abraham came from a land called the land of Ur, which is in southern Mesopotamia. And that when God spoke to Abraham and told him to leave Mesopotamia, he got up, took his family, and left. And they went to the land of Canaan. There, they were to worship the one true God. And in return, God promised that Canaan would belong to Abraham and his descendants for all time. And so God says, look, you get up, you follow me, you do what I tell you to do. I'm going to give you an inheritance. You're going to inherit this land. It's going to be yours. And not only that, but God also promised Abraham that he would have a family, that he and his wife would have numerous descendants, that he would be the father of a nation. And so Abraham does what God tells him to do. He gets up and leaves the land of Ur, and he travels with his wife and his servants to the land of Canaan. Okay? According to the Hebrew Bible, this is the reason that the Israelites settled in Canaan. This is why they chose the land that they settled in. Abraham had a grandson by the name of Jacob. Jacob was also called Israel, okay, which means one who struggles with God. And there's a reason behind this story, and we're going to talk about it later on in class. We don't really have time to delve into it right now. Later, this name was given to all of Jacob's descendants, okay? And Jacob's descendants, he has 12 sons who become the 12 tribes of Israel. They all call themselves Israelites because Jacob's name was Israel. All right, here we go. According to the Hebrew Bible, Jacob raised 12 sons. This is what we were just talking about just a minute ago. In Canaan, his family was divided into tribes or separate family groups. These groups later became known as the 12 tribes of Israel. The Israelites lived in Canaan for about 100 years, but then there was a long drought. There was famine in the land. Crops would not grow. These were bad times. So crops withered, livestock died, and in order to survive, the Israelites left Canaan and went to Egypt. The story of this happens around a young man by the name of Joseph, and we'll maybe talk a little bit about Joseph and how the Israelites made their way to Egypt, and then eventually how they had to leave Egypt as well to go back to the land of Canaan. All right, so from slavery to freedom, this is the story of the Exodus. Life was not good in Egypt. The Egyptian Pharaoh enslaved the Israelite people. And then, in order to prevent a rebellion, he ordered all of the baby boys who were born to Israelites to be thrown into the Nile River. And this was to limit the population growth of the Israelites, to keep them in check. And of course, would lead to a lot of pain and suffering among the Israelites when this sort of thing happened. They were enslaved. Their children were murdered to help prevent the population from growing too much. This was a bad time. Okay. The Hebrew Bible says that one desperate mother put her baby in a reed basket and hid it on the riverbank. The Pharaoh's daughter found the baby and named him Moses. Now, the name Moses literally means drawn from the water, taken from the water. So the daughter of the Pharaoh takes this baby out of the river and raises him as her own. She becomes his mother. 1290 BC, while tending sheep in the wilderness outside of Egypt, Moses sees a burning bush and hears a voice. He believes that this is God telling him to lead the Israelites out of Egypt and into freedom. So to get the Pharaoh to let the Israelites go, the Hebrew Bible says that God sent 10 plagues to trouble Egypt. The last plague that God sent was the worst, and it killed every firstborn child in the land of Egypt, except for the Israelites who marked their doorway with a lamb's blood. Okay, and they had to paint the lintel and the doorpost of the doorway with the lamb's blood. And the angel of death would pass over their house, and their firstborn would be preserved. Their children would not die as a result of this plague. Okay. This final plague convinced the Pharaoh to let the Israelites go. Moses has been telling him all along, let my people go. The Pharaoh resists. Another plague comes. After the final plague, the Pharaoh says, I'm done with this. You guys are free to go. I don't want any more plagues. I'm tired of it. So he sends Moses and his people on. But as the Israelites headed out of Egypt, the Pharaoh changed his mind. He decided that this was not such a good idea to let all of his slaves go, and he sends his army after the Israelites. According to the Hebrew Bible, God parted the Red Sea and let his people pass. When the Egyptians followed, the water flowed back in and drowned the soldiers. The Israelites escaped from Egyptian slavery is known today as the Exodus. Okay, and that just simply means to leave. It's like the word exit. It means to get out or to go. So the Exodus. Jews today celebrate a holy day called the Passover to remember this event. The reason it's called the Passover is because they remember in that final plague that the angel of death passed over the houses of the Israelites who had painted their doors with the blood of a lamb. Okay, we're going to pause today for the moment with this, and we're going to continue with the story of the ancient Israelites tomorrow, and we'll pick up with what happens after the Exodus. So we'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a great afternoon. Until then, take care.